Interrupted again. It happens. Anyway, so yes, I was talking about type A people, and I got off track and started talking about polymaths. Yeah, and I think what I was trying to say there was, just because you're a type A person and you don't feel the need to push your ideas onto other people, doesn't mean you're not smart. It means you could be not smart, but it doesn't mean you have to be not smart. You could be an Air Force pilot, who hasn't got anything to say on social media, in the direction of the sort of genius that someone like Kanye West has. That's who I was talking about in the previous episode. He's a genius. I don't know if he's ever had an original idea in his life, or if he's just a parrot like me. I suspect he's just a parrot. Yeah, and that's what I was saying at the end of the last episode. I suspect he's not a polymath genius, but he just parrots ideas that other people have had, But because he knows how to do it by pressing a piano key, while he's singing, and he knows how to groove while he's talking, while he's being a parrot, maybe it makes him come across like a polymath genius, but he's probably just rehashing other people's ideas, which is not to be sneezed at. That's all I do. You read other people's ideas and then you rehash them. That's what I'm doing right now. But the true polymaths are the ones who come up with original ideas. And I was about to use Descartes as an example, who came up with I think, therefore I am, and who also came up with the Cartesian plane, the graph paper that we use. I didn't even know that until yesterday, or if I did, I forgot, And I said, well, but I love that I think, therefore I am thing. That's brilliant, that's amazing. And I didn't understand it when I heard it. When I heard that sort of quote, I didn't know what it meant, but someone explained it to me. And then someone explained to me how I think, therefore I am, as a philosophical construct, was unravelled by someone called, I think it's David Hume, a Scottishman, because everyone thought that Descartes had nailed that, and they thought that Descartes had nailed God with the idea of I think, therefore I am. It's a whole thing. It's this idea of, maybe we're just God's puppets, And Descartes said, but even if we are, as puppets we are thinking, so it's academic, I still am. It doesn't matter whether I am being instructed to think what I am thinking. I am still thinking, and all that sort of thing. So he said, therefore I do exist. Even if I exist as a puppet, or as an avatar in someone's computer game, I still exist. And even if someone has programmed into me that I should fall in love with another avatar that doesn't exist, if I don't exist apparently, and this other person, the girl that I love, if she doesn't exist too. But if I think she exists and she thinks I exist, we both exist, and that's sweet love, and Descartes said all that sort of stuff, He wasn't quite sure about her, but he was quite sure about himself, Anyway, and then this Scottish bloke came along, 100 years later maybe, and everyone had thought, wow, we can't counter that. That's brilliant logic. And this is how smart some people can be. And David Hume said, yes, but in order to have a thought, you can't have a thought in an infinitesimally small period of time. It takes time to have a thought. From the moment you had the first thought, even if time is a sort of made-up construct or whatever, part of the illusion, but even the illusion of time, it becomes a thing just as much as your thought is a thing, because you can't have a thought without time elapsing, whatever time is, even if it's a magical quantity, or a made-up quantity by some god or something. Time, to have a thought, that brings time into existence. And you can't have time without space, or the idea of space at least, and so on and so forth. David Hume brought in all of that sort of stuff, which suddenly makes me, swings me back to Candace Owens, who I was talking about earlier in one of the other parts of this episode, She brought David Hume up, and I was delighted, you know, and I sort of think, there he is again, you know, because I've often thought about that Descartes thing, you know, and how Descartes was unravelled by David Hume. I think that's his name, David Hume. I call him the Scottish gentleman most of the time because I can never remember his name. It's like the Scottish play, you know, Macbeth, you know. Anyway, so she brought him up, Candace Owens, to swing back to that other thing I was talking about, African Americans, you know, trying to make their own language from scratch, you know, based on English. You know, they can't even start from scratch. They've got to base it on English even. They're still speaking English. It must be so annoying. And Candace Owens, all right, you know, remember I wasn't on the side of the rappers or Candace Owens before, but Candace Owens, for her next argument, said, well, take the Scottish, she said. David Hume, and I went, she's mentioning David Hume. He's the one I often think about but forget his name. And she said, David Hume, for example, had good advice for the Scots a long time ago. They were trying to, you know, refusing to speak English properly. You know, they were trying to, you know, they were mangling it up just like African Americans do these days, you know. And David Hume said, you're never going to win that way. You know, and Candace Owens brought up that little anecdote, and I thought, that's fantastic. You know, she might be another parrot, just like I am, you know, grabbing ideas from other people. Obviously, she grabbed that idea off David Hume, you know. But the point is, she's able to remix them and bring them together as a, you know, as a new argument, you know. So that might be non-parrot-like behaviour. You know, Candace might have that non-parrot-like behaviour, and so might I. All right, so that's that. Look, the arguments go both ways. Be a rapper if you want, or be a Candace, you know. Maybe you'll win both ways. You can make a lot of money making rap music, and you make, you know, and I think Candace is making a lot of money too, being an influencer, which brings me back to the types of people there are. A, B, C, and D in my model. You can make other models, you know. So type A person sits back and doesn't feel the need to drive his or her ideas into other people's heads. He's relaxed, he's zen, or he's stupid, all right? Now, type B people are the type of people who have ideas, even in the public domain, but they honestly don't care whether anyone picks up on them. So I would call those sort of people influencers, really. You know, inspirers, not influencers, inspirers. So type A people are zen, all right, let's call it that. Type A people are zen. Type B people are inspirers, and they're the sort of people who have ideas and, you know, all that sort of stuff, but it doesn't faze them if other people don't take on those ideas. And then you'd have, and they're very zen as well, but they are vocalising their ideas. And then you would have type C people, I think, who are really, it's really important to them that when they have an idea, that other people incorporate those ideas into their heads as well. That they reach into their own heads, they have an idea, and they need it to be in other people's heads. You know, that type B person doesn't mind. It's in my head, and if you don't want that idea, your call. I don't care. You know, your business, your free right, whatever. But type C people, they need that idea to come out of their own head and be in that other people's heads, and they actually get anxious if that doesn't happen. You know, that's type C people. Now, and that might even extend to just being understood. You know, they get upset if they're not understood. Whereas, you know, and I do think that I don't care whether I'm understood. You know, I'm understood by me, and that's good enough. You know, if people misunderstand me, good. You know, I don't care. I remember Simply Irresistible, Robert Palmer. You know, I read one of his eulogies, and they said he worked hard at being misunderstood, and that's fantastic. You know, he's relaxed. You know, whereas a lot of people are desperate to be understood, and they're the type C people because they need what's in their head to be acknowledged by someone else. Okay, so type C people, they need what's in their heads to be taken on board by someone else, and they won't rest until the other person has said, yes, all right, I agree. Yeah. Now, a type D person, I think, is someone who's not only, is not satisfied with just getting the idea out of his head and shoving it in some other person's head. Now, it's not necessarily a bad thing for people to do that. We need activists, for example, in the world. And also there's a lot of people who want to be influenced. Okay, that person is the influencer. The type C person, so what have I got? Type A is Zen. Type B is Inspirer. Type C is Influencer. Now, type D, I think, is the activist, actually. And that's the person who not only wants the other person to take on his or her ideas, but wants to force a certain behaviour in the other person. The activists. They want to alter the other person's behaviour, not only their thoughts, but their behaviours. That's a type D person. So type A, B, C, and D. Now, A, Zen, B, Inspirer, C, Influencer, and D, Activist. Now, you can get good people in each of those categories, as I've described in this episode and in the previous episodes. And you know what? To some extent, we're all probably a little bit of each at different points in time. Like I may be called to activism one day in my life. I've never engaged in an activist kind of activity, but maybe one day I will have to, to defend my country and my flag, or something like that. But at the moment, no, not really. So A, B, C, and D. And the people who want other people to not only take on their thinking, but also act on that thinking, they get really stressed until you act. That's the type D person. Until you actually alter your behaviour, they get really anxious. Because the type C person gets anxious if you don't actually just take on board the thoughts. But the type D person gets really anxious if you not only not take on the thoughts, but you don't act the way they want to as well. And, and I had an example of that myself. I made an episode a while back, which was a total satire, in which I said, I am a Nazi, or something like that. It was a joke, I am a Nazi, My childhood turned me Nazi. And someone couldn't relax, and it was for my own good. I actually saw that. It was for my own good, and it wasn't because of what she wanted me to do. It wasn't because of what she thought was the right thing to do or not. It's because she knew how other people would interpret that, and she was giving me good advice. And she said, you can't put that up on the internet. You can't say my childhood turned me Nazi. You can't pretend to be a Nazi on the internet, even if you are being satirical, because not everyone's bright enough to understand that. And you could, be putting yourself and your loved ones at risk. Now, she's absolutely right, And I think she was anxious, but that was through love. She was worried about my loved ones, including herself. Check that out. So there's a room for activism. And so I changed that episode, and I changed it to my childhood turned me Nazi, open brackets, not really, I'm just joking, or something like that, close brackets, which is pretty lame-o for a satirist, isn't it? I went back about a week later and changed it back again, of course, because, I'm a Ryan. But that's neither here nor there, But in deference to what she was saying, I put two chimpanzees as a profile image on that episode, where one chimpanzee was pulling the leg of another chimpanzee. So that's I still respected what she was saying, and acted upon that. I could have put a swastika on there, but I didn't. I put a chimpanzee on there as the image. You can put an image on these YouTube things, and I put in. I didn't put a picture of Hitler there. I put a chimpanzee pulling another chimpanzee's leg. I'm pulling your leg, and that was just to accommodate the stupid people, and all that sort of stuff. But I'm stupid myself, just a dumb parrot squawking, and that's the end of that. So in summary, I've pretended to be a psychologist in this episode, and I've created a model, which is probably a rehash of models that are out there anyway. So psychologists take this all the way, and develop wonderful models. I used to love the Maslow one, and I still do, the hierarchy of needs, but you need more than that. So there's Piaget models, and I can think of other ones, Erickson, and all that sort of stuff, and your favourite social media influencer who provides you with your memes. They're all brilliant psychologists, aren't they? All of them. So that's the end of that. My little mini-series on being a psychologist, and I've created my own model, my own psychology model, of type A people, type B people, type C people, and type D people. The Zens, the inspirers, the influencers, and the activists. And if I could be bothered, I could extend that, but I'm not going to.